Welcome to the Future Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Peace, CEO and founder of Sway Outcomes. We are a global customer engagement consultancy, helping brands to build repeatable customer revenue streams through innovative customer strategy. In this podcast series, we look at the future of customer engagement. We understand that tomorrow's customer is hard to reach. Retaining and growing customer relationships has never been so difficult. I'll discuss the latest challenges and solutions with industry champions, and we focus on what's next for the future of customer engagement. If you'd like to be on the show, then find me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for new and interesting discussions with visionaries of customer success. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Future Customer Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dan Herman, Strategy Director at Ogilvy UK. Dan, welcome. Great to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing, yeah. So why don't you take a minute or two to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, the brands you've been working on, that sort of thing.
Sure. So I'm Dan Herman. I'm a strategy director at Ogilvy UK in London, based out of the sea containers by the South Bank, which is really fun. Get a nice view of the river.
Yeah.
I'm, as you can probably hear, I'm originally from South Africa, from Johannesburg, where I spent the majority of my career there as a digital strategist and had within different roles within the South African industry, mostly at Wunderman Thompson. So really fully immersed in the world of direct marketing, digital marketing, and loyalty from kind of that heritage. And then, found myself in the UK looking to play in the Premier League of advertising and loyalty, and found myself up at one of the top clubs, Ogilvy UK, where I've had a really awesome time working across a variety of different clients. Largely in the fan engagement space with a lot of our kind of sports industry clients who are both rights holders, but also brands looking to sponsor into sports. So that's been a really, really interesting experience. And I've learned a lot about kind of the world of fan engagement and what's happening there. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much. Well, welcome to the UK. Well, I'd say you've been here a few years now. I know,
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I do think, though, actually, I've said this before, so sorry if I'm boring people that listen in, but I do think that the South African market and the UK market are very sophisticated for loyalty programs.
Yes.
I think the UK have got a lot of firsts in the marketplace, and every program's got a loyalty solution, whereas South Africa also, they've got a lot of integration that we don't really see in other countries right through the value chain. So banks actually integrated to retailers and fuel and things like that, which we don't always get. So I think those two markets in particular are very sophisticated. So no pressure, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say now, of having been exposed to these two great markets.
Yeah, sure. No, it's a really great question. And I always remember early in my career, I was working in South Africa, but I did a secondment in the New York office of Wunderman. And I was blown away at the problems that the people in New York had to solve, because in New York, everyone had an iPhone. There was literally no one who didn't have a high-end smart device. Mm-hmm. And I've come from a world where there was such kind of diversity of the way that people were engaging digitally, just based on income disparity and the phones that they could afford at different price points, and you saw kind of so much, and that diversity where we started off just people using kind of feature phones or basic phones with only SMS capability, scaling all the way to people with smartphones, I think made South Africa a really interesting market to work in, especially when kind of loyalty was kind of formalizing its presence within the industry in the early 2010s and those spaces when all the banks were getting involved, because actually that scarcity of tech or rich tech, I think, drove a lot of really powerful innovation. And what South African brands have been excellent in doing have been creating loyalty opportunities for a wide spectrum of very diverse and segmented market from the perspective of income and the different types of value that people are looking for, right? So, if you're a grocery retailer who's serving people who sit in a lower income bracket, you have to create a whole different program, portfolio, a different view of rewards, a different view of channels of distribution of your comms and messaging, a different kind of lens of segmentation, and how you deliver those kind of messages in 100 and in the characters that you can fulfill within a text message, versus thinking all the way through to kind of rich social email experiences that can only be delivered via smartphone. And so you have like this huge disparity where you get brands like Discovery Bank or Discovery Health, who created this vitality program targeting people who could afford private medical aid, versus banks like FNB, who made eBucks accessible to a whole range of different people. And I think that it really teaches you a lot and gives you a whole range of different problems to work off. And I think we're coming to a more developed market like the UK, I think they've adopted a lot of the learnings specifically around mobile engagement that have emerged out of the South African market, because that was really the foundational kind of loyalty starting point for South Africa. But I think there's been a big evolution. But obviously, in terms of richer experiences and more in-depth loyalty, so the South African market has learned a lot from those developed markets in the UK. So I think there's been this big kind of sharing between the two worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you've raised a good point there. I think that it's an alien thought process for a European loyalty manager. But imagine if you could only contact your customer on a non-smartphone, so you can only text them. And these guys are banking and communicating and everything basically through text message. And I think that's kind of hard for a European loyalty marketer to think, how on earth does that happen? But it does in South Africa. And not only that, but like you mentioned, the ebooks, and they are integrated not just with the bank, but it goes right the way through to all the retailers. Some very, very, very clever programs in South Africa. And you mentioned Discovery Vitality, and a few weeks ago we did have Dr. Jackie Nortje on here talking about the trends towards health and well-being. So thanks to the nod. But anyway, let's move on then to your most recent experience, because you are currently for Ogilvy working in sports loyalty, a lot of sports loyalty brands. And what we were going to talk today about, a little bit about that, but more specifically around how AI is really shaping that industry. So over to you. Give us a bit of a flavour of what you're up to and how AI is forming a real major presence.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, as a strategist, I think, and if you're in an agency environment, I think AI is a really big question that a lot of us are dealing with now. And we're dealing with it for multiple reasons. Firstly, at a more macro level, competitiveness in creativity and the work that we do is being determined by your ability to adapt and integrate these sophisticated AI technologies. So you're getting these big overarching mandates from the big holding companies, the organizations themselves, that are driving employees and clients into a world of AI, and also looking in lots of ways to package the kind of services that we create with AI to help clients access them easier, more quickly, and in more breadth. So I think that's kind of a first kind of bigger macro context. And you see with Cindy Rose, the new CEO of WPP, she's talking largely about how AI is going to shape her strategy and the way that the business goes forward. And that's being driven through the technology the WPP building called WPP Open, which is kind of our integrated AI platform. But I think it goes to a far more kind of personal question that most professionals are dealing with nowadays, which is this idea that, is AI going to replace the work that I do? Or is it going to do something a little bit different? And the conclusion that I'm starting to come to is that AI is absolutely not a replacement for quality thinking and quality thinkers. What it is, it's a transformative technology that can absolutely 10x the way that you approach the problems that clients are putting forward to you and asking you to solve. And it's really got this incredible kind of transformative power that's being delivered obviously through how people are becoming more connected to how to work more effectively with AI tools. But additionally, in terms of the ways you're able to kind of codify and create support teams with specific tasks and functions through the rise of agentic AI and your ability to create these kind of agents, what they're called, AI agents that can deliver and work with you and work with your teams across specific tasks and functions. So I think that, the kind of the takeout for me is that AI is transformative, not just for clients, but to all professionals in our industry. And it's about recognizing its transformative potential so that you as a professional can transform with the technology, as opposed to being so concerned about whether it's going to make you redundant, which I think the wrong conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it is.
People are tending to have.
Yeah, I think the media is scaring people into thinking that AI is going to take over and nobody's going to have a job anymore and blah, blah. But I don't think that's the case. And actually, a lot of the brands that I've been speaking to recently, we've been talking about AI for about 18 months. People are starting to invest in it. And what they're finding is that not only do they have to invest in AI, they also have to invest in training for their team, and they have to invest in another person who understands how the AI works. So this is an investment for brands, and it's enhancing people. It's growing the teams, and it's enhancing people's, they're being trained on how to use this in addition to their normal workday. So actually, it seems to be enhancing both the brand and the people. It's building on their responsibilities. So enough chat about how AI is taking over the world and nobody's going to have a job anymore, because certainly so far that doesn't seem to be the case. But what is this transformation that you talk about then? What are brands actually doing? Or not what necessarily brands are actually doing differently, but how is AI making the difference to the end consumer? What is the end consumer seeing differently as a result of AI being implemented by a brand?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good and important question. And I think, we talk about the work in the background of how AI is starting to make a difference, and you start to see, more increasing sophistication of personalized assets that are being able to create at scale, right? So scale of communication is definitely taking shape, and more aggressive and scaled personalization is absolutely happening in terms of the comms that people are delivering, just based on your ability to churn out huge amounts of creative assets at scale. I think that's one thing. But I think what you start to see in terms of fan experiences is really interesting. So Shell, for example, have created an experience with Ferrari, not clients, but what they've done is they've created this experience called the VIP experience. And what it is an experience where you kind of go to a website, you put in your details, and all of a sudden you get this personalized video with your name and information embedded within the content that you're starting to receive. So you start to get kind of generative AI integration in the content and culture that you start to consume that kind of immerses you in the fandom. I think that's quite a base level, but I also think what you're starting to see is the way that AI technology and AI search is starting to show up in how people receive information about sports. So there's a lot of talk about how AI is replacing search, and how people are using AI to get critical information. So we start to see brands looking at ways in terms of how to expose their content and their information around their sport to AI models in order to make sure that people are able to access the most up-to-date information about their products and services within the space of AI models like ChatGPT or Gemini, as opposed to simply using the standard search engine. And how you start to optimize for that is really interesting and quite a challenging situation. There's also like really interesting other tech that is starting to emerge. So like, for example, there's this new technology which is really interesting called playable worlds. And basically what you can do is you can take an image that you've generated, submit it into this AI machine, and it basically converts that image into almost like a video game that you can play and move it around. So there's lots of really interesting kind of applications that are starting to emerge that are creating richer and richer experiences for people to engage with. And that's what's making it so exciting, not just as an opportunity for professionals like us to do work, but also as a creative opportunity for brands to express themselves in really dynamic and interesting ways.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that. Okay, great. Well, perfect. Thank you. So let's dive a bit more detail into sports loyalty, because I have a bit of a funny issue with this, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but I also think, you know, fans are loyal. Like I am loyal to Nottingham Forest, and I have been for the last 30 years. Well, we've been in the doldrums, but now we're back in the big time, which is amazing. But my loyalty to them didn't waver. So how
Not
do you
even in the last 8 games.
Oh, well, did you see last night then?
Yeah.
Oh, beat Porto 2-0. Get in. Anyway, we're back. We are back.
Okay.
So yeah, your loyalty to the teams that you love doesn't waver. So how do you influence people in sports loyalty? It must be a different kind of challenge.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it's actually quite a dynamic state and a space, and a lot of it has to do with the context of your sport, the context of your club, where you're at, and what you're trying to achieve. But fundamentally, what it's got to do with is the data, right? The data that clubs are generating from their fan bases, and what they intend to do with those data. And it's not just about clubs, but right holders, but also sponsors. But I think if you just speak about right holders or clubs, I think it becomes a really interesting conversation, because rights holders are sitting on these big communities of fans. They're looking to generate databases from those fans so that they can be relevant to sponsors and partners with whom it's essentially their lifeblood, and give them besides for obviously the ticket sales that they might get, we'll come to that. But I think, obviously relevance with sponsors is lifeblood. That's a lot of commercial money that comes into the clubs. And then additionally, looking at ways to monetize the fan data they have for their own direct-to-fan products, whether that be tickets, hospitality, merchandise, is something that a lot of clubs struggle to do and need help to do. And that's where this idea of fan loyalty comes in. But I think it's not simply about loyalty, because to your point, fans are loyal. Or they reach a stage where they're very loyal because they've either grown up in the area. But I think or they've developed kind of affinity, generational kind of support from their parents or whatever that comes from. But I think the reality is that it's less about the loyalty and more about the engagement. And the more you can deepen that engagement and that sticky relationship that fans have with the different properties that they're supporting, the more you're likely to be able to monetize that relationship. And I think it's once again, it's the same fundamental principles of value exchange, right? The more value you give to fans in terms of experiences, engagement, and opportunities to kind of work with them and give them what they want, the more ultimately you're able to get what you want out of them for your kind of business goals and commercial needs, right? And I also think in a world where sport is becoming far more global, where you start to see that it's no longer just about the community around the stadium that informs the relationship with the fandom. For example, Tottenham being massive in South Korea on the basis of signing Son Heung-min, or United having huge footprints in Japan, or all different kinds of global parameters to the nature of the sports teams and the sports today. I think it's relying on that proximity and that kind of generational affinity isn't good enough. You've got to acquire new fans. You're competing in a global kind of game in a global scale. You've got to acquire those new fans. You've got to engage those new fans. And then the real opportunity and the real prize is, how do you commercialize those fans into something that's super valuable? So I think this idea of loyalty is a really interesting, and it's one that's shifting all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's more about globalization. So let's talk about motorsport. But before I move on to motorsport, because I think that's more interesting to me in terms of globalization, because that moves around.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, what happens in South Korea now? So those fans who have been loyal to Tottenham because of Son playing there, he's now gone to America, LA Galaxy, maybe. I can't remember where in America.
LAFC.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. So he's gone over to America to finish his career playing football over there. What happens to the South Korean fans? Do they stay with Tottenham or do they stay with Son?
I think that's the opportunity for Tottenham to take advantage of and make sure that they retain those fans, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think that when they buy these players and they are able to form that initial relationship, it really is the test of the engagement that they've been able to build, whether they can retain those fans afterwards. I think the reality is that there's probably a lot of great memory creation that's been done through Son at Spurs. I know Spurs have obviously gone plenty to South Korea to kind of reach the fans there, and have developed footprint there that is, profound and strong, and they've got a very strong fan base there. But I think once again, that's all part of it, right? It's all part of creating this consistent world of engagement, and then not taking fans for granted. If you feel like whatever that entry point is for the fan, whether it's through the famous player or through just, having that generational relationship or that local relationship, or something else, you've got to be able to take that entry point and turn it into something that's sticky and long term, so that you can benefit from that. And once again, I also think this idea that fans can't be loyal to multiple clubs at the same time is also out the window. I think that you start to see fans maybe having different teams supporting different teams in different countries. I think that's very common. And I think that it's not, I don't think that kind of, that passion is necessarily something that you can keep exclusive or hold on to for yourself. It's just about how you sustain it, and how you make it feel more rich and more embedded than anything else.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, I would only ever support Nottingham Forest in the UK, but I do have European teams that I'll follow in European competitions like Champions League, whatever. In the World Cup, I always love to watch Mexico. Like you do, I kind of get that. Okay, so to that principle, actually, let's talk about motorsport, because kind of the one weekend a year, I'm a local fan, and then I'm a global fan the rest of the time. So are you basically saying that you talk to me in quite a different way depending on the time of year? Because you might know that I'm a motorsport fan, but I'm only my kind of allegiance changes every now and again. It's not allegiance, but my way of talking to me changes. My dynamic segment changes. For the most of the year, I'm a global fan, and then maybe for the 5 or 6 weeks that the racing is in Europe, I'm more of a local fan.
Yeah,
is that kind of how you kind of use the AI to talk to people in slightly different way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think there's this world of fan engagement, and I think like in the context of F1, they've got different challenges, right? So if you're talking about tickets to races, that's driven locally, right?
Yeah.
So you're in Las Vegas, you want to go to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, there's going to be let's say there's a Las Vegas organizing committee, and that committee is organizing what they need to do for the races. And I think that when it comes to fan engagement, you've got to look at it at a far more kind of broad and holistic level. I think the challenge in a sport like Formula One, or or any, like in that kind of global motorsport kind of space, is that what's really important there is that you've got to sustain people's interest over an entire season. It's not like the Premier League where there's a match every week. There's 24 moments or races that you have to keep people engaged with. And not only that, those moments happen in different time zones across 4 days at a time.
Yeah.
And so the challenge becomes the storytelling of the season, and how you can keep people interested in a situation where maybe there's one team outperforming the rest of the field in a really huge way, or one driver. If you look at Max Verstappen a couple of seasons ago, where he literally won practically every single race. I think that those are kind of different. Those are kind of the different kind of challenges that they have to do, and they also need to find the products that keep people really interested, right? So, for example, sometimes an F1 race can be relatively boring, right? They get through at turn one, and then they're going round and round and round, and it kind of becomes predictable. They do a couple of pit stops. Maybe there's some complex strategy that the common fan wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah.
But you've got to find something else to root people in the sport. But then if you watch qualifying, when you just see these guys bombing through the laps, I mean, that can be really exciting. Like that can be really cool. But I think and then it can make the race exciting. It's one of those where the more you know, the better it gets.
Yeah.
And the challenge becomes so much more around educating people around the different parameters of the sport, but also in a way that's relevant to their specific interests that make it really cool. So not everyone's going to be your motorhead, your technical fan. Some people are just in it for the personalities, or for the Lewises and the superstars of the world and the fashion. You've got to find those angles and that kind of specific opportunities to engage different cohorts of fans who have different interests, and try to find ways to deepen their affinity and relationship with the sport, so that you can keep them engaged for an entire season. And keep them watching, and keep them engaging, and keep them buying.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of, there's a bit about accessibility. There's a bit about the different level of passion. So are they, like you say, you like a motorhead all the way down to just someone who likes the race or whatever? But then there's this other kind of what's the word? Sort of extra things. I can't think of the word now. But when you talk about, say, fashion, so there might be people that they like the racing, whatever, but actually they've got other reasons to engage, maybe nostalgia and all that sort of thing. And you've got to find what those things are, and then speak to the person about what they love about the sport, or what they love about the brand. And then see what works, and then keep talking to them about that thing, and then flip it slightly when the race is nearby, because then they're more of a local fan, etc. And I guess for you, is that where the AI supports you? Because you couldn't do that with a marketing team. You'd need like 1 million marketeers to work up all those different segments and connotations of content and personalization, etc. So is that kind of where the AI really helps to support within a sport loyalty marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, I think that where it could help is absolutely with that level of kind of personalization and segmentation. And I know that there's a lot of work being done across different kind of sporting brands around different tech stacks integrated with AI that can enable that kind of orchestrated communications, depending on where you're at, where you live, your engagement with the sport, and how you flip that engagement into relevant communication that gets people to either watch in a specific time zone or attend a match at a specific location, etc. So I think there's a lot of work. I think there's some. I think the industry itself is relatively far away from that level of sophistication at this stage, in terms of where we're actually able to create that personalized thing, because I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of getting to this world of data where you know exactly what you need to know about the fan, and getting the data from the fan is actually where the real kind of difficulty and challenge is, right? Because it's not like they're necessarily getting something in return from a rights holder that they can't find on social media. So it's about creating that kind of, part of a lot of the difficulties that a lot of different kind of sports brands have, is creating that unique value that makes a fan want to engage, give you the data, so that you can activate it using these sophisticated AI powered tech stacks that can kind of make that all happen for you. So I think there's some way to go, but in principle, I think that there's a real opportunity for brands to get to that level of kind of AI driven marketing sophistication in every space, but especially in the sports and sports engagement space.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, yeah, it's an interesting topic, isn't it? I mean, like we said just at the start, people are passionate about their sport, but things change. Heung-min Son leaves Tottenham, so at some point, people like Lewis Hamilton and Alonso will finally retire. These are kind of fundamental changes for fans, but you know, they need to be encouraged to stay loyal and passionate, and maybe that's where your expertise and Ogilvy's expertise really helps, which is superb. Okay, great. Look, we're coming to the end of our time now. That has been a really fascinating talk, actually. I've really enjoyed it. But one last question before we go, and that is one random question. And for you, I did a similar one for Jackie. It's South Africa focused. So her question was how many colours on the South African flag. But your question is, how many official languages are there in South Africa?
Are you going to challenge? Do you think you're challenging me with that?
What?
11 official languages.
Oh, well, according to the internet, it's 12. So we might have to go. I don't know. I just found it online just for a laugh.
No, there's Setswana, Ndebele, Venda, Afrikaans, English, Xhosa, Zulu. I can't remember the rest. There's plenty. Sesotho.
Good. It's so good. He even knows the names. I was going to ask a bonus point if you knew all the different names, but yeah, that's very good, Dan. I'm very impressed.
No, for sure. You got to know. Listen. I only ever had to learn 3.
Okay.
So, I know a little bit of Zulu, a little bit of Afrikaans. Had to do it in school. English. I can say what's it? I know Molo is hello in Xhosa, I think.
Okay.
Molo. And then, I know a few vendor words, but I'm not going to be brave enough to say them on this podcast. So,
can you say thanks for listening in Afrikaans or in Zulu?
Dankie hier die podcast. I'm butchering it. Please, I can't do it.
That'll do. That's close enough. It's better than my Afrikaans. I can assure you of that. But look, Dan, that's been an amazing podcast. Thank you very much. We'll get this up in about a week. So to everybody that's listened, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, Dan. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.